We're going to first start by writing an inequality from a word problem or a real world situation. Make plans to buy pencils and a notebook. Notice the pencils, she's buying more than one pencil, she's buying one notebook. At the school store, a pencil costs 15 cents, so that's 15 cents each. And a notebook costs $1.59. May has $5. Write an inequality to express the number of pencils she can buy. Well, because of the word each, the 15 cents has to get stuck to a letter. And I'm going to call it P for pencils. And she's buying a notebook. Now, normally I would write in here because she's buying a notebook, but we know what the notebook costs. The notebook costs $1.59. And she can't spend more than $5. So it has to be less than or equal to $5. So that's the inequality. Now we're going to solve inequalities and graph the solutions on a number line. Okay, when you solve an inequality, you treat it like an equality. You solve it just like you've been solving equations. So we have to get rid of a -4. The opposite of -4 is +4. So I'm going to add a 4 to both sides. So I've got 5x. Opposites cancel, bring down the inequality, and then 4 take away 4 is 0. This is 5 times x, the opposite of times is divide, so I'm going to divide both sides by 5. Top cancels with bottom, x is greater than 0 divided by 5 is 0. Now here's the rule, if the inequality is not underlined, you use an open circle in your graph. If the inequality is underlined, you use a closed circle. So for my number line, I'm going to have my 0 here. It is an open circle because the inequality is not underlined. I'm going to do it above the line. And see how this arrow goes to the right? That means you draw an arrow going to the right. So that's how you graph the inequality. Okay, on the next one, 8 is greater than 6 plus 2/5 x. I'm going to start by getting rid of the denominator, and if you multiply each term by the denominator, you will accomplish that. So 5 times 8 is 40, is greater than 5 times 6 is 30, plus top cancels with the bottom, 2x. Now we're trying to get the x by itself, so we have to get rid of a +30. So the opposite of +30 is -30. So I'm going to subtract 30 from both sides. So 10 is greater than, opposites cancel, 2x. This is 2 times x. The opposite of times is divide. So divide both sides by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 5 is greater than, top cancels with bottom, x. So that is my solution. However, to graph it, you actually do need the x out front. So I'm just going to flip that. So see how the arrow is pointing towards the x? So when I write it, I'm going to have to flip the inequality. So it looks like it's still pointing towards the x. This is what I'm going to graph. Okay, so 0 would be here. 5 would be over here. And the inequality is not underlined, so I use an open circle at 5. And since the arrow, after I rewrote it, is going to the left, I'm going to make my arrow go to the left. When you're graphing inequalities, you do have to have the variable out front so that you can see what's happening with your arrow. Just make sure that when you flip it, you flip the arrow as well. Okay, so we have to get rid of a +5. The opposite of +5 is -5, so I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. Opposites cancel. -3x is less than or equal to 8 take away 5 is 3. I'm going to divide both sides by -3, sorry, whatever stuck to your x. Now notice that I put an arrow under my inequality. Here's the rule. If you multiply or divide by an inequality, by a negative number, you have to flip the inequality. So that's why I put an arrow under there so that I remember to do that. Top cancels with bottom. It's not going to be a less than answer. It's going to be a greater than or equal to answer. And then 3 divided by negative 3 is negative 1. That's the solution. The graph, 0 would be here, so negative 1 would be over here. This inequality is underlined, so I'm going to use a closed circle. And the arrow is going to the right, so I'm going to make my arrow go to the right. Okay, on the next one, I need to get my variables together, and I want the variables for graphing purposes to be out front. So I'm going to move the positive 6x. I'm going to change it to a negative 6x to make it be out front. So 3 take away 6 is negative 3. So I've got a negative 3x. Bring down the negative 4. Bring down the greater than or equal. Opposites cancel. Bring down the 11. Okay, I'm trying to solve for x, so I have to get rid of the negative 4. The opposite of negative 4 is positive 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. Bring down the negative 3x. Opposites cancel. Is greater than or equal to 11 plus 4 is 15. This is negative 3 times x, so the opposite of times is divide. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 3, remembering to flip the inequality because I'm dividing by a negative number. So it's not going to be greater than, it's going to be less than or equal. 15 divided by negative 3 is negative 5. So that's my solution. And the graph, 0 would be here, negative 5 over here. It's underlined, so I use a closed circle, and the arrow is going to the left. Okay, so this is, I want to get the x's out front. So the negative 8x, the opposite of negative 8x is positive 8x. This is like a 1x here. So 9x minus 2 is less than or equal, opposites cancel, 16. I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So 9x, opposites cancel, is less than or equal to 18. Divide by 9. X is less than or equal to 2. So that's the solution. And I'm going to graph it. So I'll do that over here. So 0 would be here, 2 would be here. It's underlined, so I use a closed circle, and the arrow is going to the left, so I make my line go to the left. Okay, the next one I have to get rid of the parentheses first, so I have 3x minus 7 is less than 2 times 2x is 4x, and 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides because I want the variable out front in order to graph it. 3 take away 4, I've got negative 1x minus 7 is less than negative 2. I'm going to add 7 to both sides. Negative 1x is less than 7 take away 2 is 5. Let's come out here and finish that. Divide both sides by negative 1, remembering to flip the inequality because you are dividing by a negative number. So it's not going to be less than, it's going to be greater than negative 5. That's the solution, and the graph, 0 is here, negative 5 here, open circle because it's not underlined, and the arrow is going to the right. Okay, half of 2 is 1. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8 is less than. This is like a negative 1 here. So negative 1 times x is negative 1x. Negative 1 times negative 5 is a positive 5. I'm going to add 1x to both sides. So I'm going to get 2x minus 8 is less than 5. I'm going to add 8 to both sides. 2x, opposites cancel, is less than 13. Divide both sides by 2. Top cancels with bottom. X is less than 13 over 2. So that's the solution. And if I'm going to graph that, 0 would be here, 13 over 2 is positive, so it would be to the right of 0. The inequality is not underlined, so I'm going to use an open circle. And because the inequality goes to the left, I'm going to draw a line going to the left. Okay, on the next one, I'm going to get rid of the denominator by multiplying each term by 3 by the denominator. Top cancels with bottom. So 2x minus 11 is greater than or equal to negative 3x, and then negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. I'm going to add 3x to both sides. 5x minus 11 is greater than or equal, opposites cancel, negative 6. I'm going to add 11 to both sides. 5x, opposites cancel, is greater than or equal to 5. 11 minus 6 is 5. Divide both sides by 5. Top cancels with bottom. X is greater than or equal to 1. That's the solution. The graph, 0 would be here, 1 would be here. I'm going to use a closed circle because the inequality is underlined, and the inequality goes to the right, so my arrow must go to the right.